I got offered at the time like $5 million worth of Bitcoin. I think it was like $38 million by the time it got there. I refused it. And I got told like 8 years ago, I got told by two different people, very well-known rich people. They said, George Soros likes you. He wants to work with you, and Alexander Soros and this other Soros. You just need to stop attacking. And by the way, we want you to pump Bitcoin, which I believe in cryptocurrencies. I believe it's the future. We got a private Federal Reserve. It's all fiat. I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying, be careful. And I was so dumb back then. I don't even say so dumb. I was not in the corrupt mindset the way the world worked. Like, I knew how politics worked, and I knew how science worked, and I knew how crypto type,
No, you are not hearing things. On Joe Rogan's recent podcast he did with Alex Jones as his guest,
I'm kind of retarded.
Alex unironically attempted to claim that cryptocurrency is a pawn of George Soros and government shills by suggesting, without evidence in his usual fashion, that they're trying to pay people to shill it. To what ends exactly? Well, he doesn't explain, showing that the premise is just as well thought out as the buffoonish claim is in the first place. Then, in his typical manner, when spreading a narrative like this that just happens to be in the mainstream media's talking point list and in the state's interests, but would piss off a lot of his viewers if he were to take this position as a hardline stance, and just generally doesn't have any proof and could easily be called out for not having any, using mental gymnastics which would give you whiplash if you're not prepared for it, he then pretends he's still in favor of whatever he just claimed was a tool of the political elite by taking on this bullshit, fake, self-contradicting passive attitude where he just doesn't know, man, but makes this claim anyway so that the soundbite, and therefore the idea, gets out there and supplants itself into the anti-establishment circles InfoWars attempts to pander to. Well, unfortunately for Alex, he has a consistent track record of spreading anti-crypto propaganda through InfoWars, like when he hosted Peter, Cryptocurrency is a Ponzi Scheme Schiff on his program and had him attempt to argue pretty much every quasi-intellectual nonsensical talking point about cryptocurrency that the mainstream media has been propagating for the last 3 years or so.
Currencies, and we're looking for an alternative, and I just don't believe that these cryptocurrencies ultimately can be money.
So this facade which Alex uses to try and pretend he isn't a snake in the grass falls apart very quickly. Now, I have a lot more to say about Alex because I've been doing a lot of research on him and InfoWars because I've been noticing quite a few reoccurring anomalies in his broadcasts in terms of narrative, logical consistency, and how he treats his guests. And I have ended up finding a lot of dirt which no one else otherwise would have known about, but that's not the subject of today's video, so I'll have to save it. All I'll say for the time being, Alex, is that I know about your COINTELPRO connections. The reason I mention this interview is that it's the summation of a relatively concerning recent phenomenon I've been noticing, in which figures or media outlets which report on the news and attempt to paint themselves as alternative media, being separate from the mainstream media, have been spreading counter-narratives about cryptocurrency, which suggest that cryptocurrency is some sort of plot by the government or financial scam. For those who are unaware, I explain this in greater detail here, the link will be located in the description. Since the first cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, was developed in late 2008, governments of the world have been freaking out about it. Why? Well, because cryptography-based ledgers and blockchain systems can't be monitored by the state, and in the case of cryptocurrency specifically, the value of the currency is intrinsically based on its supply and demand, and since the coin wallets are encrypted, along with the fact that anyone can set up a mining operation on their computer and mine more of the currency into existence, and is directly incentivized to do so by the profit they receive from mining, cryptocurrency does not require banking or payment processors, so there's no middleman you'd have to go through in order to engage in financial transactions. Because of the various factors noted above, cryptocurrency is the government's worst nightmare, hands down. It creates conditions where anyone can easily trade and produce around the state, being completely self-sufficient, and meaning that the government necessarily is no longer able to sustain itself if the crypto market were to become mainstream, since funding for the state would be impossible. This is no better illustrated than the Chinese government's first reaction to cryptocurrency, which was to make all trade with it illegal, which of course was completely ineffective, and China still has the largest crypto economy in the world. And keep in mind that this is a country with some of the strictest government surveillance and a social credit system. So when the politicians realized that their usual method of just using force on anything that they didn't like wasn't going to work here, they began to try and discourage people from trading with crypto and encrypted ledgers by engaging in some of the most cringeworthy but hilarious fear-mongering ever seen in mainstream narratives. From the absurd amount of times the media has claimed that the crypto market's completely dead, gradually increasing by year, I might point out, to unironically just becoming the Ancient Aliens guy. So, as I correctly predicted months ago, it appears that now the state and major money-lending financial institutions have moved on to promoting outright lies and anti-crypto propaganda narratives through controlled opposition in the alternative media. And today, I'm going to be refuting some of these new popular myths spread about cryptocurrency in this manner. So, without further ado, let's get into some of these. Firstly, Bitcoin was created by the NSA, can be tracked, and has a backdoor function which can be utilized by the state. This theory, specifically citing a 2001 white paper published by the NSA for an algorithm which operated as a hashing system for government communications known as SHA-256. Though the document makes no explicit connection between this and any sort of currency system, some have attempted to connect this to the emergence of cryptocurrencies 7 years later, for some reason. Yeah, it really is that toothless and dumb. Now, just aside from the fact that even the initial argument from people pushing this claim cites a source which doesn't even conform to their own arguments, this is easily the most common tactic used by peddlers of pseudo-intellectual anti-crypto propaganda, and that is to use terminology that individually describe entirely separate systems and technologies interchangeably with one another. And that's precisely what's happened here. The SHA algorithm is a hashing algorithm and not an encryption algorithm, and Bitcoin wallets operate on ECC. And you know the people who argue this really don't even know the first thing about either hashing or encryption, since a hash function generally operates in a one-way connection. Mathematically speaking, the pigeonhole principle proves that you can't have a hash function which can't be reversed to some input, but with modern technology, that's basically impossible. For the same reason that modern computers can't work out formulas in polynomial time. This would make SHA-256 incompatible with any sort of cryptocurrency, since the manner in which cryptocurrencies trade is through encrypted keys which send and receive information to different wallets. But even if cryptocurrencies were utilizing SHA-256, SHA-256 has no known vulnerabilities, and there's essentially a $100 billion reward to anyone who can find a backdoor method to the various cryptocurrencies. And as of right now, as pointed out earlier, cryptocurrency is currently causing serious issues for the state. So if the state did control cryptocurrencies, they would surely have used this backdoor feature by now. Especially with the current state of fiat currencies. But that's just it. The state doesn't own cryptocurrencies. No one does, or no one can. They operate around decentralized autonomous networks structured around every wallet sending and receiving nodes to each other, which in turn updates the network to subtract and add balances. If one of these currencies was centralized, it necessarily wouldn't be a cryptocurrency, because it would need to drop the blockchain model, which inherently makes the network decentralized. And the problem with this is that the blockchain serves as a necessary function to the currency. In order to fix the problem of double spending, in other words, duplication, that arose from capping the limit to the currency's supply when programming the network, which is needed to be done so that cryptocurrencies can have scarcity and therefore have a commodity value to start, what's known as a proof-of-work mechanism had to be programmed into the network. And this mechanism can only exist within a blockchain network or similarly structured system because the aforementioned receiver nodes that allow the network to be online without any sort of host server also registers each transaction. And by recording each new transaction as a line of code into blocks within the blockchain network. So if someone tried to duplicate a transaction, the original deterministic functions which are now written into the blocks would change, and the network would simply reject the transaction as a result. Also, it can be demonstrated as a matter of fact that the concept of cryptocurrencies originate within early crypto-anarchist online circles, as there are surviving white papers, plans, and even evidence of small organized gatherings where cypherpunks, as they referred to themselves, would discuss the creation of new means to trade to decentralize the world economy and circumvent state power, going as far back as the early 1980s. The earliest specific document I was able to find referencing cryptocurrency was a short post created on activism.net by Tim C. May from November 22nd, 1992. But I know there are much older writings on the matter because in this post, May specifically references conferences which occurred in 1988, 1989, and 1990. If you guys could send some links in the comments or over Discord to older material, that would be greatly appreciated, because the portal which this page links to is formatted so fucking terribly, I simply cannot work with it. And this nicely refutes the majority of the other controlled counter-narratives, but we'll go over two more for the sake of entertainment. Second point, cryptocurrencies are a form of insert name here scheme. Now, this one's seen prominence in both the mainstream media and outlets presenting themselves as alternative media. So, I'll go ahead and give people spreading this one the benefit of a doubt and simply assume that the pundits or economists claiming that cryptocurrencies are a form of Ponzi scheme or pyramid scheme don't really know what they're talking about, but were asked to comment on it. So they're just using financial jargon in order to appear as if they have an informed opinion on the matter. For those of you who don't know, a Ponzi scheme is a form of investment scam where a single person or group creates a series of brand names which don't function as anything more than legally registered names on the stock market, and belief in the success of the non-existent enterprise is fostered by the payment of quick returns to the first investors from money invested by later investors. So basically government welfare programs, but with speculative private enterprise. Funny how scams, if done by politically non-connected people, get them life in prison by the state, when the state forces literally everyone at gunpoint to participate in the exact same systems, which the state claims is a crime when these fraudsters do it, but I digress. And a pyramid scheme is a business model where employees make money by recruiting new employees. I think it goes without saying that cryptocurrency is not even in the same fucking ballpark as either of these. Media pundits and economists who parrot this meme are very much reminiscent of YouTube skeptics who don't have any detailed understanding of metaphysics, referring to themselves as rationalists in order to sound smart. Let's just say that it has the exact opposite effect. But that's just it. Economic illiteracy is as rampant as it is in society, specifically because of the absolute nonsense peddled in government schools, politicians and their controlled media deliberately trying to destroy the general population's ability to discuss ideas with any depth by engaging in obscurantism and using meaningless euphemisms and buzzwords as a substitute for actual discussion of political ideas, and the economists like Paul Krugman who engage in techno-strategic discourse to argue for their positions in the aims of achieving the same effect. It is because of these factors that pseudo-intellectuals can say things like this, and their arguments go mostly unchallenged, and they know this, that's what they're banking on.
Second Massachusetts hero arose, John Kerry. And John Kerry said, no, we're going to tax your health insurance. We're going to tax those evil insurance companies. We're going to impose a tax that if they sell health insurance that's too expensive, we're going to tax them. And conveniently, the tax rate will happen to be the marginal tax rate under the income tax code. So basically, it's the same thing. We just tax the insurance companies. They pass it on higher prices. That offsets the tax break we get. It ends up being the same thing. It's a very clever...
So, the last one. Cryptocurrency transactions can be monitored through the public ledger. This one is just fucking stupid, and it's based on a misunderstanding of what a public ledger is. I already debunked this point in the cited video located in the description, but essentially, a public ledger is just a list automatically updated by a few coin trading websites of wallet IDs and the amount traded. Basically useless information unless you happen to know more, like who owns the wallet for starters, or what was traded, where, and when, in which case that would defeat the entire purpose of attempting to use the public ledger to monitor trade, since in order for the public ledger to be even remotely helpful in this situation, you'd have to already know everything you're looking for. So people who say this not only have absolutely no understanding of blockchain networks or markets, but they also fail with basic reasoning skills. Just to demonstrate how useless this information is, we know Satoshi Nakamoto's wallet ID, or at least one of them. How do we know this? Well, we can see the very first wallet ID which ever traded anything or ever mined any crypto through the blockchain on the public ledger. And the only reason we even know that much is not because the ledger told us anything useful, but because we know it had to have been Satoshi, since he's the one who created the network. And despite this, Satoshi's identity is still unknown. So in conclusion, while the world elite are very savvy in creating false flags, black propaganda designed to create internal conflict within opposition groups, controlled opposition designed to attract disenfranchised people, and manipulative paradigms, it requires much more to be explained, and many more implausible assumptions about cryptocurrency in order to believe that it's part of some sort of government plot. Why would they create a currency which at the very least has the potential to make government impossible? Why would they do this under the guise of crypto-anarchism and directly lead to the mainstreaming of ideas which breed skepticism towards state power? Why would they create hundreds of bot accounts which wrote for decades prior to the internet even becoming mainstream in detail about the state being illegitimate and slowly developing cryptocurrency instead of just releasing it? Why is it that the state clearly has no idea how to handle cryptocurrency, and the central bankers along with politicians seem to be incapable of acting in any sort of consistent manner to control it, as if it genuinely caught them off guard and they have no idea what to do about it, challenging their power by making it easier for people to secede? So, alright guys, thank you all for watching. If you liked it, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. But everyone who was trading in the crypto market just simply ignored them, as they were observing the crypto market continuing to grow. Recently, the number of transactions occurring in Bitcoin overtook MasterCard, and one of the biggest retail companies in the United States, Kroger, the parent company of the supermarket chain Fred Meyer's, announced that they are no longer going to be accepting credit cards as of April 3rd, and are instead going to be trading in cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin.